Okay, my mute didn't want to unmute. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning. Just after a brief introduction, I want to define what I mean by a publication strategy and explore some basic steps. And I hope that we can discuss not only this morning, but in the forum area, some of your thoughts about your own work and what you would like to get published and how and what to do next. As Nicola mentioned, I have written in quite a lot of material, including different forms of publications, and in working with my own graduate students and other colleagues, just heard over and over again the struggle that people had to get started and to figure out, what kinds of publications to do, or simply just finding the initial steps too big a hurdle to overcome. And I feel very passionately that the world needs our ideas. We have so many issues and problems, whatever field you may be in, the contribution you can make, what you know, what you've studied, could really be beneficial. So, there's a bit of kind of social responsibility from my perspective that has urged me to include this kind of work in my kind of landscape of various things that I do. So, what do I mean by publication strategy? And here I'm talking about creating a thoughtful plan for aligning your career goals, your personal and life goals with your publication options and opportunities. And here, I'm really looking at the broadest landscape of publication possibilities, and I think we need to consider our digital strategy side by side with any other kinds of publications we decide we would like to do. And I think that by creating a plan, we can make the best use of our time and maximize the publication impact. So let's look at the 6 steps I've identified here, and I don't suggest that these are a linear process, even though it's kind of presented this way. It certainly may be a situation where you find you're kind of looping back and forth between steps, but I will present them in this sequence here today. So the first step is to evaluate what you have to work with, and this would include the basis for the publications you're going to think about. So, starting by evaluating what you have and what the strengths are in the work that you've got to build upon. And then second, to really clearly think through your goals, whether they are career goals, life, professional, other kinds of goals that you would hope to achieve with your publications. And then based on those goals, who would the audience be for the work you want to disseminate? And then what are your options? So here I'm kind of taking this in 2 steps. One, the sort of more conventional publication options, and the second, digital options. And then based on all of that, really create some kind of a plan and start to prioritize, which comes first and, how you want to go about it. So let's look at each one of these. So first, evaluating what you have to work with. So for most of us, we might have, some combination of these kinds of materials. If we have a PhD, we've got thesis or dissertation. That would be a major piece of work, and whether that is recent or a few years old, that's something that you have to build upon. You may have other research and other kinds of research reports that you have created that you can also use as the basis for additional publications. And within those, you may have literature reviews, or perhaps you have completed other significant academic papers if you're a recent graduate, or maybe you've given presentations that you could use as the basis for other kinds of work. From the professional side, you may have completed projects or written reports, perhaps even done program evaluations or other kinds of research that could become the basis for your writing. And then from a personal standpoint, perhaps you have unique experiences or perspectives that you want to use as the basis for your writing. So whether you are combining that with your academic and professional materials, or whether that's something that you want to really focus on, and this could include either kinds of more opinion types of pieces, but it could also include theoretical and other kinds of thought pieces, as well as the personal stories that you might want to contribute. So once you've kind of lay out, here are all the materials I have to work with. Here's the research I have. Here are the materials I can build on. Then start to think about the strengths and weaknesses within each of those. Are they up to date? Is the data recent, or is the literature up to date? Might one of your steps be to actually bring it up to date? Is that a step that you're going to have to add because perhaps your dissertation has been sitting on the shelf for a little while, or the last time you did some research was a few years ago, and now you need to collect some new data or do something to bring that material up to date. In what way is your material relevant to current trends or events or issues that are emerging in your field? Sometimes I find in my own work, I'll look back at things that I've done a while ago and say, wow, this is still important. This hasn't these problems haven't been solved. What I had been thinking a few years ago, something that I still see some relevance, maybe as a new audience I could reach with that material. So, looking for, those kinds of questions. And then, not only, is it well written, but is the style of writing going to correspond to the kinds of publications you want to do. So sometimes we might be moving back and forth between, maybe we've got some professional work that now we want to use in a more academic realm, or vice versa. We may need to do some translation, as well as just looking at the quality of the writing, and maybe that's something that we need to work on. So in thinking about, in particular, the dissertation or thesis, and how we can use that piece of work as the basis for publications, I think there are a lot of ways we can do that. And obviously I don't have time to go into each of these in detail here today, but I'll just suggest that some ways that you might think about it. I think people tend to focus on the findings from their research, whether it's in their dissertation research or other research, and think about, how can I publish the findings? But I would suggest that there are a lot more opportunities, beyond just simply the findings. And this is certainly what happened to me when I did my dissertation. I was looking at my findings about collaborative e-learning and online collaboration, and that's where I thought I'd start publishing, but once I started to talk with people, it seemed that my methods were of greater interest, and so I started writing about the online interviews that were the methods I used, and that became a whole kind of, major track. I've now written 4 books about that. So you never know. So as we look at your dissertation or a thesis, one strategy would be to extract one section. So maybe you have a really good literature review, or your literature review took a particular angle that you could use as the basis for an article or a book chapter or something. Or maybe it's the statement of the problem, that you've identified a problem that in a unique and interesting way that others might be interested in learning about. So look beyond simply thinking about the findings, and as you're evaluating your dissertation or thesis, look for some of those sections that might be basis, perhaps for a short article, and look for ways you might repurpose it. Then the second is to condense. So as we look at an entire dissertation, we've taken pages and pages to describe different things that perhaps are way too long. And as we look at, say, the structure of the typical dissertation and the structure of an academic research article, they cover the same basic sections, but of course the length is very different. So here we're looking at how can we distill this whole very big thing down into something that is more succinct. So what do we need to keep, what do we need to lose, what key points are important to and will make sense in a coherent shorter piece. So pulling the whole thing down. But then another option would be to expand it. So here you may be that you look at a section of the dissertation and see, I could, as the example I gave, looking at the methods section of my dissertation, well, obviously, that wasn't enough to move into writing an entire book. Perhaps there were only, a few pages devoted to the online interviews in the actual dissertation, but I could use that as a springboard and expand what I have there, and think about what it could be, what the significance of it could be, as the basis for a larger piece of writing. This is also the strategy to think about if, once you've looked at your dissertation, realized that a few years have gone by and you really plan to do some publishing, but you got busy with other things, and so now you need to perhaps expand on the literature review or some of the materials that now need to be brought up to date. Another way to think about it is to adapt it. So perhaps you're taking a new perspective, or you're putting the findings into a different context, thinking about, a different audience. And so, an example of, from my own work, I went back and did used a different type of data analysis and then wrote a more theoretical chapter that I contributed to an edited book. So, is there, something that you could, look at in a new way and adapt it for a different purpose? And then finally, to apply. So here, maybe in your chapter 5 of your dissertation, you have recommendations for future research or recommendations for practice. Maybe, as we think of in a moment about career goals, you say, well, my career goal is to be a consultant, or to be an instructional designer, or work in management. And those people are not going to care about an in-depth literature review. They want to know how to actually use the findings that I've discovered. So maybe you think about creating some kind of a handbook or a manual or a guide or something like that that helps practitioners or parents or teachers use what you've learned. So thinking about all of those kinds of options with your academic work, your dissertation, or other kinds of research reports you've done might give you some thoughts about opportunities you hadn't considered before. So then, what is it you want to achieve with those publications? Where you want to go with this, and how do you organize your strategy to meet your goals? So one way to approach this, if you're kind of new and trying to enter a new field, perhaps as a career changer, you might want to look at position announcements and look at the types of publications they specify. Now, of course, if you're going into a traditional type of academic job, you know that they want to see peer-reviewed articles, but those aren't the only kinds of jobs people try to approach with a PhD, and not all academic institutions value the same kinds of publications. And then as you look beyond academic work into other kinds of fields, what would they value? What is going to give you the kind of open door you're looking for? And then another way to explore this would be to look at what successful people in this field write. It's interesting sometimes to see that even in academic world, that some of the most successful people in some fields are writing more practical books. They're writing practical how-to books. Yes, they also publish peer-reviewed articles, but they are reaching out to people who are going to actually use their research. So what makes the most sense for you? Perhaps you're thinking about starting a consulting business, or starting some other kind of a practice, a clinic or something like that, where your reputation in the field is what's most important. Or again, maybe a training guide that you can then use to offer workshops. So all of these these kinds of options I've listed here might correspond in different ways depending on what your career goals are. And then as a related point, thinking about your audience. So based on the goals you have, whether they're career goals or your personal or life goals you feel passionate about in terms of translating into your publication, are you trying to other academics? If you're thinking about publishing in journals, are they journals that your target audience would have access to? How does your audience kind of access information? What's popular with them? How can you reach them? What kind of form are they going to want to read or view? So thinking about the conventional options, and of course here we don't have time to go into the details of what goes into each of these types of publications, but as you think about sort of at this broad brush introductory level, which types of publications would reach your target audience? We think as academic types about scholarly journals, but there's certainly lots of other ways that we can reach people in our field, including trade journals or newsletters or materials that are distributed by professional associations. Certainly, getting out into kind of the broader general press. And then, thinking about books, which could include chapters in someone else's book, or creating edited collections, or writing books yourself. So, as you think through your goals and your audiences, do some of these meet your needs, and which are they, then as you move forward with your strategy, thinking about what goes into each one of those, whether it's making the connections with people in your field, joining those associations, getting involved, volunteering, so that you can find your place for being included in those kinds of publications. So with some of the steps that you might want to think through will be looking at the publishers who, especially if you're thinking about books or book chapters or even journals, who is respected in your field. If you're trying to make a certain kind of impact, are there particular publishers that people look up to that will, kind of add your credibility simply by the association? What is the review process and the timeline for getting your work out, in that field, with that technique? What does this publisher expect of you? So, as you look at, particularly thinking about books, today publishers expect the writer to do quite a lot of the promotion for the books. You're expected to have an audience already. And this is what, we'll get into in a moment once we start thinking about the digital options and how those will fit. If you start to look at the kind of proposal guidelines, for some publishers, you may have a fabulous idea for a book and a lot of material written, but if no one knows who you are and you don't already have an audience, that could be a constraint that will prevent you from having your proposal accepted. So we'll kind of touch into that in a moment as we look at some of the ways that we can use digital options to build our credibility in the field. And then, what about royalties? Are you going to be paid up front? Are you going to get a percentage of the sales? Or are you going to get paid at all? Does that matter to you? Are you trying to make a little money with your publications, or is it simply something that you feel you need to do in order to move forward in your field? And as Nicola is pointing out, there are certainly not only in predatory journals, there are also publishers who will sound very attractive, and it can be very flattering. I just got a phone call maybe last week from someone saying, oh, we see you've written these books and these look great, and how about if we make a deal with you to do something with your books? And I'm like, who would this be calling me out of the blue? Probably not somebody I want to have anything to do with, but particularly for people who are just starting out and just coming out of school, trying to figure out, who would be, the respective publishers is certainly an important step. In addition to looking at, these kinds of lists, there's a, I'll post some additional resources in the forum about publication ethics, and you can use those to try to screen out, the fakes that you want to avoid. But I'm a firm believer in the value of professional associations. So, whatever your field might be, say, I'm very involved with the Academy of Management because I've been teaching in a business school and business and management education. So I can look at my professional society and, the kinds of places where others in that society publish, and that might be a way to find out, who is respected in my field. And then, we can't stop there. And, so even if we decide that we want to focus on those conventional options, journals, chapters, books. We can't ignore the other digital options, or it may be, depending on our career goals, that the digital options are really the best way to go, and that's where we want to focus all of our attention. So we can think for a moment about what some of those might be. So, as we're considering the possibility of publishing in, say, open access online journals, or even blogs, websites, self-published books, other kinds of digital delivery methods, and even kind of multimedia approaches for disseminating our work. Here are a few things we might want to think about. And I'm just looking at Shanali's post about in audio, text, and video format, and I agree that thinking through all of these kinds of ways to share your work is really important today. Whether that is as a standalone or to complement other kinds of publications. Yes, infographics. In the webinar that I gave last week about using digital media, I talked about infographics. So I can publish some of the resources I used for that in the forum a little bit later. So as you're thinking about, well, where might you, if you've created either written or media materials and you want to get them out in a digital way, here some of the kinds of things that you might want to consider. Depending on your audience and your goals, is this publishing approach accepted in your field? Is this going to add to your credibility, or might it detract from your credibility, depending on where you are in your career at this point? So, is this going to help you or not? What is respected with the audience you're trying to reach? And that those audiences are changing, as we're discussing in the chat area. So I think that the digital options are really important to consider. Then I think is an important one to think about is how are you going to go about it? I mean, are you going to create your own blog, website, digital presence, YouTube channel, and all of that, or are you going to collaborate, perhaps finding others, a small group of other people in your field who have work that is complementary, and try to use your group effort to create a bigger presence, and kind of share the load of the work that goes along with doing this kind of thing, or might you want to look for some organizational umbrella? So, let's use the example here today. I mean, we are using a digital method right at the moment in the meeting we're in right now. This is one way that we can share information, share our thoughts and research findings, etc. So, I could just I have a WizIQ account. I could just do a solo webinar and just put it out there and advertise it myself and try to reach my audience and go it alone. Or I could do something with other researchers and use my own kind of video meeting space to offer events. But in this particular example here today, I'm working with Emerge. So I'm working with your organizational umbrella and your audience, and that gives me not only a chance to reach a different audience I might not otherwise have found on my own, but also I think opens up the opportunities for other kinds of collaboration. So given your goals and what you want to achieve and the time you have to do it, what makes the most sense? There may be some combination of those. Again, professional associations and different kinds of informal groups can be good places to reach new audiences and find opportunities for um, to not only to find new readers, but perhaps other people who are of like mind and can build your network, because that might be one of your goals. And then to what extent are you going to do it yourself? So when you start looking at digital options, if you're thinking about self-publishing a book on Kindle, or using making podcasts, or creating a blog, creating graphics, do you know how to do all of those things? Do you want to take the time to learn how to do all of those things? Or is this a place where you're going to need to contract some help, and then how much will that cost, and how does that factor into your decisions? And then finally, the promotion piece. How are you going to reach your readers? If you're going about this on your own, are you collaborating with someone else? What kinds of digital presence do you need to create to build your reputation and find your tribe? So, as you're mentioning here in the chat area, the LSE blogs, or whatever your field might be, looking at what is popular, who already has an audience, where can I get my work out there and have not only the added credibility as being a part of that highly reputable space, but also they're doing some of the promotion. They already have readers, so you don't have to spend as much time doing that. This is a choice that I've made. As I think about my own strategy, there are things that I do on my own. There are things I do collaboratively, but I also look for those organizational partners. So, for example, I have my own Vision to Lead website, but then I'm also a writer for the Sage Method Space, which is the publisher's kind of online community and sort of blog site. And then that way, I'm not having to do, all of the promotion or all of the technology infrastructure. Someone else is doing that. I can focus on the writing. So, as you think about your strategy, those are decisions that you can consider. And then, putting all of that together into, some goals and some kind of plan. So, what have I got, what are the materials I've got to work with? What are my priorities? Do I have some short-term goals? Are there materials I have that are really timely and time-limited that I want to get out there before this data is, hopelessly out of date? And other things that maybe I can, are going to take me longer to do, so I'm going to put those into, kind of a longer range set of goals. And importantly, how do these things fit together? So, as you, think about, what kind of career goals do I have, and what are the combinations of material, I want to think about. And, I would suggest that it's, as straightforward as it used to be. That, it used to be that we would, maybe think that to go in the tenured academic job, that, all I need to do is write peer-reviewed articles and everything will be hunky-dory. But I would suggest that, today, even if that's the kind of job that you're looking for, you're expected to have an online presence in many fields, and, some institutions are actually looking at that, as part of the hiring, part of promotion, and so, having that, active engagement online with some of the things we were just talking about a moment ago, with perhaps, other organizational partners, with other collaborators, etc. So, it's not, as straightforward as it might otherwise be. And looking at, say, in a professional field where I'm looking at working in a company or an NGO or agency of some kind, then perhaps what I want to think about is a book or a manual that is to demonstrate my credibility in this field. I can lay out my thinking, the models I've developed, the approaches I think are important to use, and build my reputation that way. Certainly book chapters, in any of these, book chapters, if you're thinking about writing a book someday, starting by writing book chapters can be a good way to contribute. One of the things that I have found in my experience is that the editors of books are much more supportive, shall we say, than editors of scholarly journals, where it's a kind of either you are accepted or not. You may receive comments for revisions, but you're probably not going to get a lot of coaching and support in making those revisions. Whereas with a book chapter, that editor is invested in making the book as good as he or she can make it be, and tend to provide a little bit more support. So one of the things I found that in my work that contributing book chapters was a great learning experience. I really observed how the editors worked and used what I learned then once I decided to edit books myself. So that might be a strategy that fits in a number of these kinds of career options as a place to start, especially if you're thinking that then you want to go and write an entire sole authored or edited book yourself. As a consultant, if you're thinking you want to go out and be a freelancer of some kind, probably the social media digital options are going to be really important. It may be that it's not only a matter of the ease of publishing that way, but also that we can get the timely, hot new stuff out there to people in a way that is not going to be the case with the peer-reviewed article. Certainly, if you want to be a consultant in an academic field, having some peer-reviewed articles in your vita, your resume might help, but probably more important to look at the digital options, and then the idea of a guide, a manual, perhaps a workshop, set of materials that you can self-publish and include, as the kind of the text for the workshops that you give. So, thinking through, and doing a little research on, what's going on in the field you're trying to enter or trying to make advancements in, and then, which types of publications are going to best fit. What do you have the kind of research or experience basis to write, and what are you going to need to develop in order to achieve the kinds of publications you hope to offer. So thinking about what those types are, what the sequence is, where do you want to begin, and what are the steps along the way will be important to your publication strategy. And then importantly, think about what kind of system of accountability can you put into place. I would say that what I hear over and over again is that I don't have time. I'm busy with my job, my family, my life, everything else. How do I can't get this done. I got something started, but then I can't finish it. I can't get all these things done. I don't, perhaps you picked, too many too many kinds of publications to do. The sequence and timeline was not realistic, but maybe you simply need some other system of accountability. Maybe that would include, starting some kind of a writing circle, finding your kind of community of practice as a writer, as a researcher, people who can, help you stay on track and, keep moving forward. Maybe that, in some cases might be that you're, hiring an editor, or you're hiring someone who's going to help you improve the quality of your work so that you can move forward more quickly. So, these are all, kind of pieces of the publications you want to think through. So I just want to give just a couple examples, and then we'll have a little bit of time for questions and hopefully continue in the forum area. So, as you're thinking about your publication strategy, think almost like an ecosystem. And, what are the different, kinds of things that you are planning to do, and how do they fit together? So, perhaps you say, well, I want to focus on my digital strategy, and, maybe I'm going to create my own blog. Or perhaps here in this center, I say, well, this is going to be my book and my the website that goes along with my book from the publisher. You might have various things. You say, well, this is kind of the central kind of place that I can sort of the repository for my work. This is the most important piece. And then what are the other elements, and how are you going to make them fit together? How are you going to use which combination of, say, digital media to build the credibility, to reach the audience, to make your work a success. So let's say, for example, if this book is actually a textbook, and so that means your audience would be faculty members who you hope will adopt your textbook and teach it, then how am I going to reach those people? And these these parts of my ecosystem might also include events like conferences or other kinds of professional discussions. May include presentations. What are those elements, and how can you use, instead of feeling like, well, I'm just torn in a million directions, I've got all these different things I want to do, to try to think of it as a coherent whole and look for kind of the ways that these things can be used to complement one another. And I have one example to share with you in terms of kind of a digital example. So here, and this the first image, here is a visual image. We haven't, the amount of time we have here, the chance to talk about, just very superficially that, we want to use different kinds of formats to attract attention and communicate to different kinds of audiences. So here we have someone first posting, we have something posted on Twitter that includes this kind of intriguing visual image. And then if you click on that image, then it takes you to, and good link to Nicola's comment a moment ago about this LSE blog. Here we have the originator of this image, Wasim, who has written a blog post about, so here he's used the organizational umbrella to reach a bigger audience than he might otherwise have reached, and to provide a more substantial piece of writing than would be possible with the Twitter post. But these two things complement one another, because the Twitter post is going to pull people into reading the larger piece of material. And then within that, he's linked to his own blog. So, this then, links to his other publications and kind of some of the research foundations of his work. But, if he had, just started with, his own, the entire promotion, finding the audience would be on him. Whereas this way, you can kind of start to see that, he's got a strategy here to reach different kinds of people with different kinds of formats and ways of presenting his work. So as I mentioned in the chat, if this is something that you're interested in working on in depth, we can just have kind of a brief overview in 1 hour. But if you'd like to really dig in and work through all of these steps with some guidance and feedback, we're offering this 6-week course that is just getting ready to start. So if you're interested in that, I am going to offer a discount for the eMERGE members, and I can answer questions in the forum as well over the next couple of days. So what other thoughts and questions? I go back here to see what's been posted. Okay, so looking at the your point about working from less deep roots, I would say, look at the strengths of what it is that you have. Excuse me. If you perhaps you start with something that is smaller scale, where you have a depth of understanding. So maybe what you have a depth of understanding is in the literature or the statement of the problem, or even the need for future research that you see. That maybe your research, you don't have the scope of in your own research or your findings, or maybe you haven't completed your research, but you see the need in your field for some research, and that's something that you can write about. So what is it that you do have enough knowledge in to begin to write, or then to think, well, maybe you don't start with some very large piece of writing, and instead think about something like a substantive kind of blog post for a reputable site. So even if it is a shorter piece, that it has some important points. Again, when I was creating this slide and thinking, well, sometimes one of the issues is that there are voices that we haven't heard from. There are perspectives on a problem that have not been a part of the larger conversation. And so maybe that is what you're able to offer at this point. Maybe you don't have this kind of a substantial research foundation yet to draw on, but you do have your unique perspective. Maybe it's your perspective as a student. So this is where this kind of evaluation and really reflective process, I think, is valuable. That there are probably things that maybe are outside of the kind of traditional way of looking at kind of research foundations or publication foundations that still would be quite valuable to contribute. So Nicola mentioned, need to focus, and that kind of prioritizing is hard to do, because sometimes really kind of depends on what opportunities present themselves. Someone will invite you to contribute to book, or invite you to be on the editorial board for, some publication, a book or a journal, and, that's not something you could plan for. So, there's a little bit of that to contend with, but I think that by, actually, sitting down and trying to lay it out, in black and white, what it is you want to do, then, you can look at, what is really most important, is going to get you the farthest, and then, what are the things that might be nice but are, kind of a distraction. And then, thinking about the question of credibility. What, if you have, like someone like me, or I have, a million interests, if I am writing about all of those, maybe I'm not building, a more focused reputation that will, kind of support the credibility in the particular, with the particular piece I'm trying to promote. So, if I'm trying to promote my books about online research, but then people are, seeing a whole lot of work about something else, is that going, kind of distract them from, what my real focus is at this moment.
Much for this enlightening session, Janet. I'm aware that it is 1 minute to 5 o'clock, in SA time. But I see we have some thought-provoking discussion going, and I hope it continues in the forum. I've put a link. Now I can do that again. Share it. And we encourage you to continue this discussion. And thank you for all resources.
Alrighty, I will look for your posts in the forum, and we can continue the conversation and have kind of a little more personal exchange. And if there are others you think might enjoy that conversation who weren't here this morning or this evening, please invite them to join in the conversation in the forum area.
Thanks again, Janet. Just a reminder to folks that the recording will be available in the Facebook event page, as well as later on our YouTube channel, and you can find the link over there. But wishing you enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are and whatever time it is there. And yeah, we'll keep in touch via the forum and continue the conversation. Bye, everyone. I will now stop the recording.